Hello and welcome to the Enquire PRO show. We are joined by Stefan Hankin. How are you doing today, sir?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Doing great, doing great. You have a couple of companies in addition to being an Enquire expert and pro member. So thank you for that. And I wanted to just let you tee it up and introduce yourself and your companies however you best see fit.
Sure. So Stefan Hankin, and like you said, have two companies because I'm not a smart human. But
Place to work, right?
I mean, one is a pain in the butt. Let's do two. So the first one is Lincoln Park Strategies, which I founded in 2009, which is what I would refer to as a more traditional market research firm. Quantitative, qualitative research, surveys, focus groups, in-depth interviews, things like that. And we work with political campaigns, issue advocacy groups, nonprofits, do some corporate work as well. Typically, it tends to be more policy issue related. Everything kind of touches government on some level for the most part. It's not a universal truth, but that tends to be more true than not. And then the second company is Trendency Research, which I'm a co-founder in, and myself and my fellow founder on that. Well, depends on when you want to start the clock. We filed, the company officially filed for paperwork in 2013. We didn't really do anything with it until 2017, and then I didn't really put much of my time into it until about 2021. So we're either 10 years old, 7 years old, or 3 years old, depending on when you want to start that clock. And Trendency is a online research platform that we developed, built on a deep learning infrastructure that we work with our clients. We bring in their key audiences, and then we engage with those audiences over time to get an understanding of how opinions and behavior are shifting based on what's happening in the world, marketing campaigns, what have you. And I won't go into all the details of the platform, but we view it as like, this is our view of where market research can and should be going. So we're sort of pushing the envelope on what's possible when it comes to understanding what makes people tick.
That's excellent. And that is, at the end of the day, we're just trying to figure out other people, right?
Right.
It's interesting that your path has kind of mirrored the trajectory of Enquire as well, which started out as Global Wonks, was a kind of a traditional expert network, and had already really started down the road towards AI integration and really being a tech startup before the open AI boom of a few years ago, where AI becomes kind of ubiquitous and everyone becomes an AI company. Enquire had really already started down that road, and certainly benefited from it. Certainly was a few steps ahead, but ultimately using technology to connect decision makers, problem solvers, people to people.
Yep.
And so I'm curious, since you kind of interact with that that model on a different level in a different field, how do you see technology impacting what you do on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, a ton, right? And I think for both good or for bad, right? So from a data perspective, right? And especially with the Trendency platform, we're dealing with massive data sets, but in the big picture, right? I mean, I think a lot of people would, if we, I don't quote unquote, showed them our database, they'd be like, wow. But in the big picture of life, this isn't like, this isn't like all that huge. But we have something around 40,000 active users of the platform who are on average logging in about once a week, answering 8 to 10 questions, and each question has 2 to 3 data points. So it adds, the size of the database increases pretty quickly. And then so for the technology side of it, and especially on the analysis side, right? Like this has been game changing, right? Where when you have that much data, an individual, a human being looking through that information, trying to figure out connections is one of the least efficient things humanly possible. I mean, sometimes it's something pretty straightforward where it's like, okay, this person said they thought this, and then 3 months later they said this, and then what happened in between those two things. But more often than not, the reason for change isn't apparent. And what we can do now with with our platform and, utilizing AI and that deep learning infrastructure is that like, okay, here's our starting point, here's our endpoint, here's all the data. Please figure this out for us. And, 3 days later, there's, 6 different options spit out of like, here's what's plausible, or here are the most likely connections. So from that end, fabulous, right? Like, and we're just scratching the surface on where these things can go. On the negative side, I mean, I think it was like a month ago, I got an email from a company that creates synthetic data for market research firms, which, I was like, well, if used correctly, I understand the point of this, but they certainly, I mean, they didn't say it directly because it would be borderline. It's not illegal. I mean, it would be very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think clients would appreciate this, right? But they were basically saying like, hey, if you just do 10 surveys, we can then use that to create over, 2,000 different responses that would be plausible based on the data that you provided us, right? So I'm like, well, I can quickly see how some companies would be like, well, I can save a lot of money by just doing 10 interviews instead of 1,000 and then just pay these people to give me data and use that as the result.
So it's interesting that you bring up synthetic data, because I think that's a decision that Enquire has really taken a pretty hard line on, that we want to have data that we can always justify, that this is about people-to-people interaction, and that either synthetic data or low quality data, whether that is from social media, Wikipedia, different things like that, that we always want to be able to point out exactly where in the data the information came from, and connect the people that need to be able to go deeper with a particular conversation. So where are your thoughts on that in terms of either synthetic data or just the quality of data in general?
All over the place, I think, right? So it's like, again, it's this sort of like, I can argue the positives, I can argue the negatives. So, on the one side, it's like, look, with the amount of information we have and the ability to access that information, I mean, it's incredible, right? And, everything from, the sort of the basics of like, I can get places much faster now because on my phone, it can tell me, the best route and where there's been an accident and reroute me if something bad happens and all that kind of stuff, right? So, great, absolutely fabulous. But oftentimes volume creates noise. So, and we see this with, like with ChatGPT, again, not disparaging the technology on any level, right? But if you just walk in into it, like, your conversation with ChatGPT and you just put in one question and it spits out an answer, like, typically that's not going to be a great answer. Like, it's sort of the like, well, in this like massive, data set that I have, this seems like it probably answers what you want. But if you, start using better prompts, you start pointing the system towards the topic that you're asking about, and then you ask the question, you tend to get a much richer answer, right? So it's and I think this is where, I mean, and you see it getting better, but but it's still like, this is a very tough problem to solve, where it's like, how can, if I'm Google, right, like, how do I create the AI answer that's, better, easier to use, and accurate to, to our users, so that they can just put in that simple question and get the more robust answer versus just getting the, I don't know, this seems to connect with whatever it was you were asking.
Yeah, I do get the impression with a lot of those AI chatbots that it's, to be fair to them, it's sort of like walking up to somebody that has no idea what you've been thinking about and just asking them a question.
Yeah.
That may or may not be relevant to anything they were thinking about before.
Yep.
They're probably going to give you the best answer that they can. And then the natural question, if it were a person, is, why do you ask?
Right.
or what were you thinking about that prompted that question? So yes, it is, in a way, it's almost like, that can be a stand-in sort of for a junior associate, or, a man on the street or something like that. They're going to probably steer you towards the middle of the bell curve on a lot of information. But if you want something specific, if you want something advanced, that you can't cut humans out of the AI loop or the data loop in general.
Well, and I think we've seen, plenty of examples of how technology can like completely help, but not necessarily replace, right? And then I'm 100% not the first person to say this. Multiple people said it, right? Like it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's someone who knows how to use AI that's going to take your job, with that idea. And then, even if like, look at sports, right? So like Moneyball becomes a thing. Oh my God, all sabermetrics and the data and all this kind of stuff, right? And then it kind of works for a little bit. And then people over rely on it. And then the game was for poop for most people. And then what it really is, it's like, look, the data absolutely helps you make better decisions, but you still need that human element to sort of be like, I'm going to apply that learning into what's actually happening in front of me and make it sort of a better decision, and not just because the computer told me to do it, I'm going to do it, right? So with AI and all these things, right? Like absolutely it is a powerful tool. It's an amazing tool. It's getting better and better, but it's still, where if you want a really good product, you're using that as a tool and then still adding the human element and analysis on top of it. But what it's saving you, I mean, sort of that example I used with connecting the data, right? Like we're not putting 100 people on trying to figure out this problem. We're putting a computer on, figure this out for us, and then we're going to take that information and put our analysis on top of it.
That's such a great point. And one of the, bringing it back to Enquire, one of the things that we talk to, sort of the newer experts as they're onboarding onto the platform, and even reminding some of the older experts too, is that, the goal with what we're trying to provide is not the facts. That at the end of the day, this is not necessarily intended. Sometimes questions are framed this way, but it's not really intended to be a market research tool or a give me the facts on this particular thing. That there's enough of that information that exists online that it really is sort of the interpretation of that information or the firsthand experience, often sort of within the expert class. How would you use something like this? What has been your experience with this tool or with this experience? How have you gone to market with X, Y, or Z, rather than just sort of the high level generics? So, what has your experience been like in becoming an expert on the platform?
I think overall positive. I mean, and I'll say most of the time if I get like a pulse match or something like that, right? Most of the time it's like, okay, I can see why I got this. Every once in a while it's like, I don't even know what that means. I've known nothing about this topic. But usually it's like a relatively, I'll call it obscure topic or question where it's like, there's no click box for what this is, kind of idea. But then, and I think it, and I'm sure on the client side, they'll say the same thing, where it's like they get a range of answers from very helpful to like, okay, like pretty good to like, what is that? And then, and sort of, I'll say the questions fall into a similar spread in my experience, where most are like solid questions. I believe, this totally makes sense for this platform, and, what you're looking for can be answered in, 1,000 words or characters or whatever that, the limit is on that particular question. But then, people sneak in with fairly ridiculous questions, and or like, it's like you just asked something that is, a PhD dissertation, right, and there's no way that is getting answered in, 1,000 words or, 1,000 characters ever.
Right. No, and especially some of the multi-part questions too, where it's like, well, I can give you 4 pages on that, 10 pages on that,
right?
But it does force you to be kind of tight in your feedback.
So. Yeah. No, and and I think just throwing out ideas for I mean, like, it would love a sort of like a conversation mode, right? Where it's not like instantaneously necessarily, but it's like, here's our basic question, give an answer. Okay, we have a follow up to that, right? So, and then, and it's like, just answer this within, your 24 hours. Cause I mean, from the sort of the expert side of it, right? Like you write this answer down and it's like, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think it's answering the question. Like, did it help you? And, so that feedback loop is, sort of not there, which is like, I mean, part of, I think, I won't speak for everyone, right? But I think part of the joys of the consulting world is helping clients achieve something, right? So, and you see that tangible, like we helped, right? Like we helped you get this product to market. We helped you better understand your members. We helped you, get better regulation in place for your industry, whatever it is. That's underlying the sort of the joy of doing it. And, so you kind of like that, like, did this actually help you at any level?
And I think that there are, one thing that you don't necessarily know as the person who is answering the question is just the mindset or the framework of, again, the context of whatever the person was considering when they asked the question. Because I know that I have personally used, a network pulse before, almost as a I'm gonna check my own thought process on this. Like, am I crazy in approaching things this way? And you get back the responses that you get, and more times than not, on those types of questions, it is, it at least gives you more confidence in the decision you're going to make anyway. It's like does this make sense to you? And if in 1,200 characters you can either confirm or deny that, or at least give me a have you thought of, that can be really helpful. Even if it's exactly what you were going to do anyway, just to sort of, this is my thought process. What do you think of this? And,
right.
There have been times when some of the strategies that I've employed, I feel better about them knowing that, hey, at least Stefan agrees with me for what that's worth.
at least one person doesn't think I'm right. Totally crazy. Yeah. No, and I think this is always the hard part of, like, whether you're selling something or, it's like, look, I have a theory of what this answer is or what the change should be or what have you, right? And I want to be able to kind of test out this theory. But, that's hard to do a lot of times because it's like, it either feels like I'm trying to sell you something or, I'm coming up with some sort of crazy idea because I want to sort of test it out and see what the reaction is, but that's going to make me look really bad or, what have you. It can be sometimes tough to get that sort of that honest feedback or that, that people aren't feeling like they're going to hurt your feelings and, or, that, they're just trying to sell me something if I answer this.
Yeah, it's a judgment-free zone. And I think it actually does help a little bit from the expert side to not be able to see who's asking the question.
Yeah.
That there's something that's kind of nice about that. While sometimes that would certainly help to know who it is. There's other times where it's just like, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it as a result. This is kind
right.
of the situation, and this is the truth as I see it, at least. So
yeah. No, and I think that, there have been some, and I couldn't tell you what the numbers are, right? But if for every like 10 pulses that I answer, I'm sure like, I think like 9 get accepted or something like, and every once in a while something gets thrown out. And, every once in a while it's like, all right, I didn't know a ton about that topic, but it was interesting enough for me to answer. So I'm not going to I'm not losing sleep over this. But every once in a while there's like, it was, it's something where like, no, I know that was a good answer, and like you might not have liked it, but like I want to know why you said that didn't meet your standards because
right.
like
or
I want to know
answers that were better than mine. Right?
Yeah,
I want to know. Yes, no, that does happen occasionally. I don't think I asked you this. When did you first encounter Enquire, and how did you get involved with it?
Next, I don't know. 2 years ago? Is that like in my account? It sounds about right. I don't hold me to this, but I'm going to guess I got an email from you all of just like, hey, we have this platform that we're setting up. It was definitely like, it was Policy Wonks, I think, is like when and then it moved into Enquire, and now there's the next sort of iteration of it. And so I believe it was an email, and I was like, all right, like whatever, like this seems interesting enough, and doesn't seem to like, or at least they say it's not going to take up much of my time, so like I'll check it out.
Yeah, I do think again, kind of going back to the in an ideal world, it is primarily asking you your firsthand experience, your personal feelings on these things. So I feel like if you take much longer than the 10 minutes that we estimate, it's on you. At some point you either went down a rabbit hole or perhaps trying to cut back to 1,200 characters sometimes that's where I run into trouble. But
Right.
no, that's very cool. Well, that's good. So I'll throw it out there to you. You know, the intersection of sort of knowledge work and that digital expert space, meshing with technology. Do you ultimately think this creates more opportunity for people, less opportunity, better, you know, higher quality? Where do you kind of see things going from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the, you know, and this isn't just in this industry, but I think one of the toughest things is connecting your problem with someone who can actually solve it, but like actually solve it, right? So whether it, you know, I mean, if and there are companies out there that have tried to make these connections, right? So like Angie's List or Angie or whatever it's called now, or you know, things like that, where it's like, look, you know, I need someone to fix my toilet. I don't know how to do that. What do I do here? I mean, you know, like obviously way back in the day for people over the age of, I don't know, 40, you know, like you got out the yellow pages and you just flipped over to like plumbers and, you know, who looks good, or, you know, or you're talking like call up a neighbor or friend and like, hey, you got any plumbers reviews, like those kinds of things, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
you know, and then and this is a difficult thing to solve, right? But I think this is, I hope this is where we're heading, in the like, I can define the problem and then the technology can connect your problem with the person who can really actually solve this and has the expertise to solve this, not just sort of the generic, you know, I need something fixed in my house. It's like, oh, well, here's a general contractor. That's like,
right.
Well, that's not really what I need, right? Like, I need the electrician. I need that, you know, that specific thing. And, you know, because a lot of, most of us, right, with a lot of things, it's like, we don't even know what we don't know. So it's like, I kind of know, like, I certainly know what my problem is, but I don't really know what the true solution to this is. So I don't even really know what kind of expert I'm looking for. So I think, you know, that's sort of where it's like, I think technology is heading and will ultimately start helping of making better connections in terms of solving problems.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's, I forget whether this was a Donald Rumsfeldism, or I'm sure many others have gone down this path, but there's sort of the known knowns, the unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns.
Right.
And, you know, hopefully technology is better at solving the unknown unknowns in the future, where, like you said, you have a problem that you can't quite identify, you know, it's a problem.
Right.
And then you are able to very quickly find the right expert. And I do think that is something that hopefully, you know, technology and AI and just algorithms in general will just be better at recognizing those patterns moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and this is going to sound like a really random connection to this conversation, but like the example that like I love and I just find fascinating and is like Amazon warehouses, in that, you know, they basically totally minimizing this, right? But but they were like, why do we have shelves where, like, you know, the apple juice always goes here and the cereal goes here? Just when something comes in, it just goes to the first open spot, and then we log that in, and then when it's time to pack a box, the you know, the algorithm tells us the best path, where everything is, and the best path to get those in the most efficient manner. And it's just like, I mean, this is like, I mean, brilliant, but also like, I think it's just like, this is the, like, the world's problems that need to be solved, right? It's the like, and, you know, I mean, there are other super random examples, right? But then there's this architect who's like my, like, I don't know, spirit animal or something. Never met him, but like, I just like I'm going to totally pronounce it incorrectly, but like Barke Engels, like from Denmark. But the big building that he designed that kind of got him on the map was an apartment building in Copenhagen, where he said, he was like, why is there a hallway on every floor in an apartment building? That makes no sense. That's a waste of space. So he created it so every apartment had 3 levels, and then there was only a hallway on every 3rd floor. So on some, you know, you were walking on the 1st floor, on some apartments you were walking on the 2nd, some of you were walking in on the 3rd. And I was like, that's it, right? Like, you know, that's what our world needs, more of the, like, the why, right? And then, and also people to listen to be like, yeah, like, we don't have to keep doing it the same way.
Right, right. We don't have to think of, and also the things that, again, you haven't even. Well, maybe that is really the final iteration is that before you even know there's a problem, that technology can start to identify those things as like, hey, here's an efficiency dashboard of your organization right now, and you've got holes in this area, and these are the people to talk to. These are the, sort of give you a diagnostic and prescriptive response there. So yeah, it's brilliant. It's an exciting time to kind of be in the space, and I try to look at everything optimistically. That kind of being in this knowledge working space, that ultimately at the end of the day, technology can help make us more human, help make us smarter and more efficient and more productive and all of that good stuff. But ultimately, connect people with the right opportunities too. I think that's something that's also been severely lacking. So we'll see if that ends up being the case, and just hope for the best on all that.
Fingers crossed.
That's right. That's right. Well, Stefan, thank you so much for taking time with us today. Really appreciate your insights. And did you want to plug anything else, or tell us where people can find you? Be happy to let you have the last word here.
Sure. Trendency.com, spelled as the way it sounds. That's where we tend to put most of our data and our findings and information about us. Always happy to chat data and results with folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
You too. Bye.
Cheers.